Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. I'm a newsman, y'all, always looking for what is new. But so often I find that the facts that stick with me from a good news story is the history. Listening to a story about the anniversary of Clarksville native Wilma Rudolph winning her first gold medal, I was reminded of the incredible feat it was for her to become one of the fastest women of her day. Hang with me here. So she overcame polio and earned a spot on the Tennessee State University track team with the famed Tiger Bells, coached by the legendary Ed Temple. But the fact that stuck with me and sticks with me today was one I'm not sure I'd ever known. Wilma Rudolph was diagnosed with brain and throat cancer soon after she returned to Nashville with her husband and 4 kids to work for what was then Baptist Hospital downtown. As the disease ate away at her, she kept her sanity and strength by meeting her old coach at the TSU track. Ed Temple would give her his arm, and they would walk laps together until she became too weak to do so. She died at 54 years old in 1994. And this is the kind of story that Nina Cardona lives to surface for all of us. Her Nashvillager podcast is a steady dose of fun facts and pertinent points to understand the news of the day in Middle Tennessee that can come at us so fast. And Nina, welcome to This Is Nashville, a show that you host occasionally when I'm gone.
Once in a while. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks
Weird
for being
to be in this seat.
Yeah, the guest chair. But
Yeah.
so, the Nashvillager podcast, I'm just a huge fan. It also works so well for my schedule because I do a lot of like scripting for this show in the morning and then drive in after morning edition so I don't catch the news. So I listen to the Nashvillager instead in the car.
That's what it's there for.
There
Folks
it
in
is.
your situation. Yeah.
Because you've got this sort of day in history element, then you got the newscast and a feature from the newsroom. But what is it about this like idea of this day in history concept that maybe opens some of us listeners who are not necessarily drawn to history, that like helps us listen to history more closely than we might on any other random day?
Well, honestly, I can't speak for what it does for the listener. I've always been such a history nerd that it's just a no-brainer to me. I think of it kind of like the Previously On before TV show. You want to know what the backstory is. You want to catch up for things like that. Also, I think everybody loves like a little something that we used to call it the water cooler kind of moment, where you can just drop a little piece of information that's fun to talk about, like I'm going to talk about this over a beer with a friend. Like I think a lot of times the history nugget can be that kind of thing. Yeah. Honestly, I came up with the idea of having that be the opening for the podcast, really to reinforce what day it was.
Oh, I see. That is
right?
just
like
it is October 29th.
Date.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do with that date? We toyed around with talking about the weather for the day, but that could change by the time somebody listens to it. But like, let's have it be something that's a little more evergreen. And I'm such a history person that just made sense.
Well, how do you find something new to talk about every day? And I ask this as someone who has filled in for you and seen this massive spreadsheet you have. But yeah, how do you find something new? Where do you find your ideas?
Oh, some days it takes a little while. I've always, it helps that I am the morning edition host and I'm doing all those newscasts. So I because the point of the podcast is to talk about the news of the day and what's happening now in Middle Tennessee. And so I kind of have in the back of my mind all the kind of ongoing stories that we've been putting in our newscasts. And then I go through, there's several websites that I go to that have a kind of compilations of things that happened on this day in history. Yeah. And I've figured out which ones I trust to actually have real dates and which ones I don't. And I go to the trustworthy ones and I just kind of flip through all the things that they have and see like, how could that connect to, what could that connect to? And I do keep a big spreadsheet of all the ones that catch my eye of, if like next year we have something like this going on in government, this thing that happened in like medieval England could have a tie. Let me just make a note so that I know that it's there.
Or were you on a trip in Europe or something and found some little detail that you were like, I got to use that? What am I thinking of? Maybe I'm just making something up. Well, But I'm thinking of stuff that would never be listed somewhere else. I think there was an episode that the jumping off point was the incorporation of the city of Hendersonville, or maybe it was Sumner County or something like that. Why would you see that date somewhere?
Well, and then I periodically, right now it's killing me that we can't go to the public library downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Because every now and then, every few months, I go to the Nashville room and I just camp out and I start pulling books off the shelves in the Nashville room. Especially, I love those. It was a thing back in especially the 60s and the 70s for like a local historian in a town to put together their compilation of everything they know from the history of Hendersonville or Goodlettsville or wherever it is, and like self-publish it. They print like 20 copies, right?
Yeah.
Probably some of them be sold.
Just so it could be stored by the city or the county.
One ends up in the Nashville room, one ends up at the State Library and Archives, one ends up in the local library. But going through those and then looking through their footnotes and seeing that this is actually well sourced, and then if it is, then I can trust the dates in it.
Wow.
But there's these old histories of Nashville as well that are in the Nashville room that I've gone through, and anything that's interesting, I just made a list by date so that I can find them.
Well, and we just get to enjoy it in bite-sized pieces each morning. If you're just joining us, our guest this hour is a familiar voice, Nina Cardona, sometimes filling in for me on this show, Blake Farmer, but also senior producer and host responsible for the Nash Villager podcast. So recently you took the anniversary of the creation, I think it was of the harpsichord.
Yes.
And made that into an explanation of how we got the name Honky Tonks. How did we get from this plucky piano to a raucous bar?
You want the history of the honky tonk? Is that what you're?
Sure, why not?
I mean, people need to listen to the episode. But this was a particular delight of an episode for me because my background is music history.
Yes.
That's what my degree is in, and so it's like the first music history piece that is just pure music history that I've done and maybe the last. I don't know, but honky tonk. The etymology it went through a kind of multiple stages in its evolution. So first it was just like an onomatopoeia for a really out of tune piano in a Wild West saloon, or in these, particularly in the Wild West and in these really rundown bars near the port in San Francisco, the really sketchy places would have these out of tune pianos that probably who knows what had fallen down into the works of it. So when you played it, it sounded like honky tonky, honky tonky, honky tonky.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's just an onomatopoeia. And then it becomes the name for those establishments. And then it also becomes the name for kind of ragtime piano played on those pianos. And that goes out of fashion. And another kind of bar where that kind of music had become popular in other places becomes known as the honky tonk. And then another kind of genre of music that comes out of those bars becomes known as honky tonk music. Ernest Tubb is one of the guys who plays that. A bunch of these guys who play that, mostly out of Texas, they come to Nashville. They start playing it at bars here in Nashville, and those bars become known as honky tonks, even though they're kind of a little bit different from the bars in Texas.
They're not like the saloons, exactly.
Yeah. So it's different kinds of bars through the years, and it just pendulum shift. It's the bar, then it's the music played in the bar. Then it's a different kind of bar, and it just zigzags until you get to Nashville and Lower Broad. All
right, this is what you get on the Nash Villager. So, all right, listen, another day, I also learned about who regulates playground equipment in Tennessee. And I don't even know that I remember exactly what the specific anniversary was that got us digging into Tennessee code about the monkey bars. What was it?
And this is one of those days where I didn't know what I was going to write about.
Okay.
And some of these are the best, because then I do end up just kind of digging in and seeing, well, how does this work in Tennessee? And if I didn't know it living here all my whole life, then probably nobody else does either. And so I saw on one of those just websites that it was the anniversary of the patent being issued for monkey bars. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can do anything with this.
And this is
but
monkey
I have
bars,
to see the patent.
Because after hearing it, I was thinking monkey bars just straight. I'm thinking my daughter learning the monkey bars was just hand over hand.
This is the playground equipment that does not exist anymore. That was like a three-dimensional cube of cubes of just pipes, basically. And you could just clamber all over them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the monkey bars. And I saw that and I got to thinking, whoa, you don't see those anymore because they're not safe. And then I was like, well, wait, who decides what's safe on our playgrounds now? And what was the impetus for everything to change? And it seems that it was pretty grassroots, but there is a degree of regulation in Tennessee for what is safe, specifically playgrounds at schools and daycares. Now, other than that, buyer beware. But there is a group called the International Playground Safety Institute, something like that, that sets guidelines, and the state follows those and encourages everybody else to as well.
Yeah. Well, and it ends up guiding, the kind of playground equipment that your kids are playing on here in Middle Tennessee. I do wonder, how often is the history you highlight something that is totally new to you?
A lot of the time.
Really?
A lot of the time. Yeah.
Well, is that what you're looking for? That something for someone who even grew up in Smyrna, has lived most of her life in Middle Tennessee, still wouldn't know? Yeah,
I do, because I want to learn it. Right? So I'm looking for it for the listeners, but also it keeps me going with I'm learning it. And that's why sometimes it is history that I absolutely know. So the other day I talked about the nun bun theft.
Related to the Louvre.
Absolutely. I could have told you that out, without double checking any information. But then I also learned there was a crazy art theft out of an Arby's in Johnson City, Tennessee that I'd never heard of before. Who would have ever thought of stealing art from the Arby's? But yeah, that was brand new.
Well, I appreciated your apology to the audience saying, listen, I'm not saying it's art, but it's artistic design.
I also talked about real art too in that podcast.
Well, we do need to take our first break, and then we'll be back with more from Nina Cardona, the host of your weekday podcast Fix in the Morning, Nash Villager. Getting to know this person, any listener to this show and this station is going to be so familiar with. So stay with us. More of Nina Cardona coming up. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Nina Cardona has us all beat in the WPLN newsroom. She's worked at Nashville Public Radio nearly 30 years. She reports on the community she grew up in. And in a moment when so many people are learning about Nashville for the first time, maybe they're moving here, we go to have someone help us who has some real institutional knowledge, and not just as a journalist, but also as a human who has lived in Middle Tennessee for most of her life. Thank you for being with us, Nina.
Thank you, Blake. And I would add that you bring the same value as somebody who also grew up here.
I did grow up here. And in different, I was in East Nashville, which was a fascinating time to grow up in the 80s and 90s. And you were in the Smyrna area, correct?
Down in Rutherford County.
Well, I wanted, before I get a little into your own upbringing, I was just thinking of the kind of thing that you highlight on the Nash Villager. It's like, oh, you would have exactly experienced the discussion of this growing up. And that was this thing that, I'll be honest, I had zero knowledge of. And I don't know if I was too young or what. But you highlighted the last time that an underground tunnel got as much attention as the Music City Loop that's being built between downtown and the airport.
Yeah.
And the reason, I believe, for diving into this was the anniversary of firing up the Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland.
Right, because it was going to be a competitor with that.
Well, and so there were plans to make a very similar collider in the Murfreesboro
area? I think it was
area?
going to be even bigger.
Yeah.
And the main entrance to it would have been in Murfreesboro. And I was you would have been too young because you're a little younger than me. Uh-huh. And I was just old enough to be noticed,
You
up
actually
on the
remembered it from
conversations.
your childhood.
I have this really vivid blink of a memory from it was a church party that was in somebody's, at the home of a church member. And I was just old enough to want to, when you're at that age where part of you really wants to just be running around with the kids and part of you wants to feel grown up and
yes,
take part in adult
11-year-old is in
bit.
that mode right now.
Yeah, it was around that age, and I was trying to trying to hang out with the adults a little bit, and the conversation went to that and to this thing that was being projected. And they were like, I think it's going to run right under where we're standing right now. And they were kind of freaking out. And I was just inwardly going into panic mode because it sounded so scary.
Right.
And so I have this very brief memory of that. And then when I saw that it was we had this thing with the tunnel, and that was kind of scratching an itch in the back of my memory. And then when I saw it was the anniversary of the Large Hadron Collider, I was like, was that real?
So you always had to look at the history and say...
I absolutely had to look it back up and go, was that real, or was that a weird dream that I'm remembering? No, it was real.
And if I recall, the decision was made to actually not make it in Murfreesboro, build it in Texas, and then it got defunded by Ronald Reagan when he was cutting spending, I believe, as president, something like that?
I think it was H.W. Bush. But yeah, it was kind of approved under one, I think, Reagan, and then defunded under H.W. Bush.
Well, how has growing up in Middle Tennessee helped you cover the news, much less the history, but just sort of like understanding putting the news of the day in perspective?
I think it helps a lot. I mean, if nothing else, I know how to pronounce things and I know where they are. And that's not a small thing.
No.
We have some weird pronunciations around here. And I'm reminded sometimes of, as we have new people come into the newsroom from other parts of the country, like I understand instinctively that like our map of Nashville is on a tilt. Right? North Nashville is actually northwest.
Yeah. Oh, when
West Nashville is actually southwest. Like, just even little things like that go a long way when you're trying to
I actually
convey
hadn't
what's
thought
going
about
on.
that if you took Davidson County and you just twisted it a little bit to the right, that's really the cardinal directions we talk about, because East Nashville is a little northeast.
Right.
North Nashville is actually northwest.
Because, and the more that I dig into the history, the more, too, I understand that a lot of this, what we call the different parts of town, it comes from a time when people weren't looking at the actual map very often. And so their mental map was just based off of how does the grid align with the river downtown, which is at a tilt.
Wow.
And everything is in what we call north, what we call south. It's all in line with that grid downtown, but that's not in line with the cardinal directions.
What do you think about the area specifically that you grew up in, which I believe is essentially the fastest growing, the most densifying area, the Smyrna, Laverne?
I don't even recognize it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't find my high school very easily anymore because I went to Laverne High School, which is on Sam Ridley Parkway. It's just off of Sam Ridley Parkway. It's on Wolverine Trail. But when I went to high school, between the interstate and Old Nashville Highway, the only thing on Sam Ridley Parkway was the entrance to Wolverine Trail and the sign for my high school. And now
so it was like
is every big box,
for
everything.
The school. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then every gap between here and there, as here being, we're in North Nashville-ish in Metro Center, has been filled in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even,
and almost all the way out to where my parents live now in Las Casas, which is crazy.
So growing up, did you think you would be a news person?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Not even when I started at the station.
Right.
I started at the station playing music. I did that for 7 years before I came over to news.
When you started, we were still doing news in the morning and afternoon,
and classical music the rest of the day.
From 9 to 3, and then
in the evenings.
Yeah.
All night. Yeah.
And then there was a big switch when we were able to purchase 91.1, which is now WNXP, but where we could have music separate from the
And I did
news.
jump over there for about 5 years.
Right.
And do that after doing All Things Considered for 11 years.
So how did you get into music?
My mom is always fairly musical. I started being more serious about it in high school. I sang in the choir and was really enjoyed that a lot and was good at it.
But it was mostly a singing thing,
really
not
falling
instrument.
Although I was friends with half my friends were in the marching band, so I ended up being in the color guard for a little while. And,
wow.
Hung out in the band room all the time.
This episode, we may have to put a picture of color guard Nina on the top of it.
Yeah, I don't know if there is one anymore. We didn't have phones with cameras.
Well, good point.
To
not as many pictures
it was the 90s.
Existed around. Well, did you always have this love of history? Like even if you're thinking back about in that sort of like middle high school time?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I grew up in my household. We were always history enthusiasts. My mom definitely is. My dad as well. I mean, we would watch a lot of historical dramas. in the house. That we were more like that was more the family viewing than say like a Star Wars in my house growing up.
And I've heard over the years, since we've worked together long enough, stories here and there, even certainly met your parents. But what was, so I've heard some stories, but what was growing up in the couch house like?
Well, I think I always, for one thing, my parents were both born overseas. And
I was trying to remember that because I was thinking, was she in the mission field for a while?
My grandparents were in the mission field. My mother's parents were in the mission field. Mom was born in Ecuador, mostly grew up on and off in Ecuador. My dad was an Air Force brat. He was born in Germany and then ended up back in Germany again when he was in high school. And I think I very much had a sense growing up of a much bigger world, right? My parents were more, I think, global citizens than anything. That was the mindset in our household.
I see.
And at the time in Smyrna, there weren't a lot of people who weren't from Smyrna.
I guess so.
It always felt a little weird because of that, but in a good way. And my mom, well, both of my parents are book people. My dad's a publisher by trade, and my mom's a librarian. And I would end up spending a lot of time at the library too. And so, for instance, when I was in 8th grade, the library was right next to the school that I went to in 8th grade. And I would just go there after school. And as soon as I finished my homework, then I just wander the library and end up pulling just books at random off the shelves, kind of like I do in the Nashville room now, seeing what was in there. And that was very much just that kind of intellectual curiosity and always digging into things. We had an Encyclopedia Britannica in the house. And
well, you got it. Well, of course you did.
when I was bored, just pull one off the shelf and flip through and see what you find.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville. I'm your host, Blake Farmer. Our guest also hosts this show from time to time, but my longtime colleague, Nina Cardona, host of the Nash Villager podcast, one of my favorite ways to get my mid-morning going with news updates and her essays that really bring some of the past into the present. Nina, what drew you to radio? Did you do radio in college?
No, we didn't have a radio at my college. We did not have a radio station, I should say. We had radios. We always listened to WPLN. That was basically the only station my parents ever liked to have on in the car. And when I was in college and kind of floundering around trying to figure out what on earth am I going to do with a music history degree, which is just kind of this thing that I had landed on because I really enjoyed. Those were my favorite classes. So
why not get a degree?
And I'd gotten a music scholarship. So I had decided I did not want to be a performer. So I needed to figure something out. What was I going to do with this degree? Because I knew I didn't actually want to be a professor. And I was home on break, and my parents were members of WPLN. And back at that time, WPLN had a member magazine that came out. I think it was still every month at that point. Yeah. At one point, it went down to quarterly. I think it was still every month at that point.
I think it was called, or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of them on the shelf right there. But we did not have cable TV. This is important because you'd get bored real easy. So I would just grab whatever there was to look around. I read every magazine that ever came into the house because of that. And so the member magazine was sitting there, and at the time, the longtime founding program director was retiring. And it had an article in there, homage to him and what he did, and explained his job. And one of the things he did was he picked out all the classical music. And I was like, oh, I could use my degree to do that. How do you do that? And I just contacted the station just with some questions. And they really desperately needed somebody to help out with cataloging a backlog of CDs.
Yeah.
And so I came in as an intern and did that. And then they gave me a job.
Wow. But when did you sort of make your on-air debut?
Well, technically it was that summer when I was an intern.
Yeah.
Henry Fennell.
Yes. Who was our program director at the time, right?
Did the kindest, craziest thing. Thank you, Henry. He let me go on when the station would usually sign off at 10 p.m. or midnight. I can't remember which one. He let me program another 2 hours of music after our usual sign off. He was like, it's late enough, nobody will be listening. You can make all the mistakes you need to. It'll be fine.
Wow.
And it stayed with me, but I was able to do that. And then actually as a paid host, I started training 2 days after my college graduation. And the person who was training me decided to kind of abandon me to it. Like that Wednesday of that week, I was on the air by myself.
Wow. Well,
Making
thrown
a
into
lot
the
of
deep end, they
mistakes
call it.
because I was totally thrown into the deep end unprepared, but I figured them out.
Well, two personal questions, then we got to get to a break. One is, somewhere along the way, there's a guy named Chuck Cardona that comes along.
Yeah.
When was that?
We were both counselors at the Tennessee Governor's School for the Arts one summer.
Well, you knew him in
he was a
college?
I was in college. He was out of college. He's 4 years older than me.
Okay.
So he was just into his teaching career.
I see.
And he needed a summer job, as most young teachers do.
Uh-huh.
And his professor that he was very good friends with was one of the theater professors.
Okay.
And pulled him back in to be a theater counselor, and I was a choir counselor.
I see.
And
Well,
we met there.
It's the counselor's story, classic. And then you all have two beautiful children who are not even close to children anymore. They're grown
adults
human
now.
beings,
Yeah.
which is amazing, having seen them as small people many years ago. Did either of them go the music or journalism route?
So Jessica sang in a choir for a little time in middle school, but then she was mostly visual arts.
Yeah, I knew she was into art.
And Edward is a music guy.
Yeah. Oh, he played trombone.
He played trombone in high school,
Right.
and now he also has bass, 2 guitars, keyboard. He ended up college adding in a class guitar, class piano to round things out to get all his. But that's all for fun. He is an accountant.
Well, there you go.
Doing great.
Doing the numbers. Well, Chuck, your husband, was on the show recently, and I must say he actually has a very soothing voice. If we needed a new late night DJ, I think he might get
Absolutely.
the call.
I think he would be perfect for not our kind of radio, but other radio, like the also great radio.
Yep.
He'd be really good at a more like stylized kind of radio.
Well, he's had this career, a full career as a teacher in metro schools.
Mm-hmm.
Then he kind of has this retirement job, which is a real job, in metro codes.
At the help desk.
At the help desk.
Yep.
I wonder about how his work has helped you understand Middle Tennessee.
Oh, tremendously. Tremendously. The stories, I think I just mentioned the other day in one of the podcast episodes, the stories that he comes home from work, talking about, and now it's really helpful as we talk a lot about zoning.
Yeah.
I understand it so much more than I ever did a few years ago, but especially the stories that he would come home from and be like, oh, this kid's situation is breaking my heart, or what's going on, like the frustration with this parent or that, not breaking confidence from anybody. I never knew the names of any of these kids, but the situation, it just gave me much more situational awareness. And he was at a magnet school for most of his time here in Metro, which the magnets draw from all over Davidson County and all kinds of income levels and all kinds of immigration status and all kinds of everything. And so it's been a very good education for me in the full breadth of who we are as Davidson County.
We need to take one last break. We'll be back with Nina Cardona, host of the Nash Villager podcast and your morning newscast host on WPLN. When we come back, we talk early morning routines without coffee. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. You're listening to a sort of crossover episode. I like to say Nash Villager in the morning. This is Nashville in the afternoon. For those of you who don't listen live on the radio at noon to this program, in the AM, your host is Nina Cardona. She's up before dawn putting together the news so you can listen over your coffee or while driving at 6 a.m. But of course, she's always been a morning person. That's why she gets up early for you, right, Nina?
No. Don't say these things.
I remember when you
So
started
not
taking
true.
the mornings, I was thinking, Nina, I thought you were not a morning person.
And I'm still not.
I love that.
strangely I found that the shift suits me. I get my afternoons to myself.
Well, people love asking about the routines of people who have like odd hour jobs, I feel like. What's your morning routine?
The alarm goes off at 3:45, and I try to be in here like an hour after that.
Yeah.
So
3:45, something about the pre-4 a.m. Like when I'm filling in for you, I don't set it, but I'd rather like be very quick out the door than before 4. 4 feels like, all right, that's still morning.
Right. I have, for a while I did this 6 a.m. shift over on the classical station when we still had that. And it's a different mindset, even though I only need to be here a little bit more than an hour before.
Yep.
What I was doing with that. I will fight myself hard over if I think, I need to set up 5 minutes earlier. Like that feels way too much because it starts with a 3. But I just try to get ready as fast as I can.
Yeah.
Because that's the only, as not a morning person, that's the way that I can do it, is if I just throw myself from bed as fast as possible into the work.
Yep.
Like,
Which is almost nice because you're working almost immediately and you're like, oh, wow, it's 9 o'clock and I've worked half a day over here. So.
Yeah. And then I figured out how to the workflow that when I walk in the door, the first things I do are really rote and routine and my brain's still warming up.
Yeah. So
I'm doing them.
You don't drink coffee, do you?
No, I hate the stuff. It's not worth it.
Do you use anything to help stimulate you in the morning?
Yeah, I do have caffeine. It's just not coffee.
Really? Tea. You're a tea person.
I'm a tea drinker. And it's had to, I've had to pull back to green tea for...
Is there caffeine in green tea?
Oh, yes, there is caffeine.
Okay,
Not as much as black tea.
I see.
But black tea gives me heartburn.
So how does the Nash, well, we all are aging. How does the Nash Villager fit into that schedule? Because you do newscasts, at the top of the hour, which, what we call, like 6:04 and at 6:30, and there's other things. So
there's a newscast of that material in the podcast as well.
Right.
That's the middle segment of the podcast. So I try to have that recorded before I do the first one on the air at 6:04.
Got it.
So I get in and I get a handle on what we have in hand, what our reporters have left for me in terms of the stories that we have to run. And it's actually turned out to be really helpful for doing Morning Edition, that I go through and I make a newscast just of all of our material for the morning, in the order that makes the most sense as a flow. And that's my podcast newscast. And I go ahead and record that. And then I can break that up into where things are going to go across Morning Edition. Because Morning Edition, I have much shorter chunks of time for the newscast. So I'm having to say this story here and that story there. And
what are tricky mornings like for you when things are changing?
Oh, the trickiest mornings for me, honestly, even though things aren't changing in the moment, are the days after an election.
Oh, yeah. Because there's so many races to monitor.
There's so much information, and so much of it is kind of interrelated, really. And so figuring out a flow to put all these stories together so that they're telling the one big story of the election is a little tricky. And sometimes it is having to say, I'm not going to read this part of the story because that's actually going to be in that other copy that I'm reading, because it's all kind of...
And kind of navigating a lot of that on your own. We have an editor who works from afar and pitches
starting
in.
At 6, but I've got to make a lot of decisions before that editor shows up. So,
which is why it's helpful to have a senior producer on early in the morning. What do you do when the weather's getting in the way, like snowy mornings? How do you get here?
Well, thankfully, I live close to the station, and we didn't even think about this when we bought our house, but it's turned out we've got the perfect route.
Right.
Honestly.
Why? Because it's plowed?
Part of it, the majority of it is plowed. But also, the most important thing is if I park on the street in front of my house, I can go completely downhill to Charlotte Avenue.
So you're sledding to work, basically. Okay.
So even if some mornings it is. It is a sled to get to Charlotte, and then Charlotte's always a little more... one of the most clear roads in town. Yep. And then from there, I'm safe. If
you're just tuning us in, we're closing out with Nina Cardona. This is Nashville, though. Don't be confused. I'm the host, Blake Farmer. And, we're keeping Nina from writing tomorrow's Nash Villager essay, which she will. All right, we're almost done. As you think about what the Nash Villager is becoming, what do you hope listeners get from it?
I hope it is an empowering sense of who we are as a community and how we got to be what we are with all the complications. Sometimes it is complicated. Sometimes it's not pretty, especially trying to look at the history, not from a boostery kind of yay, raw Nashville, but that we are a place that comes out of complication and that sometimes we have messes still left to clean up, that you would know what they are so you can figure out your part in cleaning them up, but also so that you could take some joy in the place where we are and see how well connected we are, how thoroughly connected we are to the world at large.
You know, I know you were friends with Gail Kerr, who wrote the Tennessee.
Gail Kerr, yeah.
Well, so much of what you do now, I think she was I'm not sure what her title was, but a columnist. She was kind of the voice of Nashville for at the Tennessean, I felt like, and just really, it was like when Gail wrote about something, like, oh, that's the Nashville mindset on this topic.
Absolutely.
And I wonder how much of her you're channeling.
You know, I had not thought specifically about trying to channel Gail.
Yeah.
But if I were ever compared to Gail, that would be the highest of compliments.
Yeah.
I definitely feel influenced by her because I read her work pretty religiously, and I had an incredible amount of respect for her work. And then I had an incredible amount of respect and appreciation for her as a person.
Yeah.
And if she rubbed off on me, I take that as just the biggest compliment I can take.
You know, you have this thing that maybe even almost going on now that you sometimes almost will get choked up on air. It's happened in newscasts on those tough days.
Yeah.
You know, when the news is really heavy, and I'm sure you're thinking of a few of those times. What is that helpful, or is that getting in the way?
Oh, I never want to. I never want to, because there's always something more to be said after the moment that I do get choked up, but I can't help it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I care about this. You know, I'm just a person who is a little weepy at times, and that's just who I am, and I can't quite get past that. It does make it hard to say everything that needs to be said, and that's why I don't want to do it. But sometimes you just can't help it.
Yeah, but is it you bringing your humanity to this thing that in the past there's been this distance between you and the news announcer?
Right.
I don't know.
I hope so, even though I will continually try not to.
Okay.
I read that copy that I know is going to catch me up. I read it a million times to try to get past that point, and then it happens anyway sometimes.
Nina Cardona, the keeper of our community's flame, or at least I'll say it, host of the Nash Villager. It's just her newest job, though, at Nashville Public Radio, senior producer, our morning edition host, nearly 30 years at the station. Thank you for your continued service.
Thank you, Blake.
Well, thank you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Tasha A.F. Limley is our managing editor. Our producer today is Mary Mancini. Board operator, Liv Lombardi. Masterminds behind our theme music are L'Orange and Namir Blade. If you missed yesterday's show, it was a continuation of our coverage of homelessness in Nashville and what it's like to get housing after life on the streets and then lose it. That's what the episode's about. Listen wherever you get podcasts or ask a smart speaker to play the latest episode. The conversation doesn't have to end here. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear by emailing thisisnashville@wpln.org, or find us on the socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, and X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.